This is Ian Nethercott with the famous Auto Hub show. This show is not live, it's recorded, even though it says live behind me. But we have the pleasure of talking to Aaron from Honda of Salisbury, or Honka of Salisbury.
Yeah.
I'm correct?
Pohanka.
Yeah, Hanka. So tell me a little bit more about, I guess, the group that you work for, but more importantly, why the car business? Because there's always a story. So go ahead.
Right. Yeah. Open with the story. Well, thanks for having me first and
Yeah,
foremost, Ian. I appreciate it.
no worries.
I work for the Pohanka Automotive Group of Salisbury, but it's a larger group. The family's, 100-year-old plus business out of Chantilly, Virginia. And they have multiple partners in different states like Florida, Texas, but mostly Virginia and Maryland. And I represent 9 here on what we call the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And so I work for a well-known woman in the industry named Sandy Angelo, and my story in the automotive is, I mean, it's a long story. I don't know where to start on that, but I haven't been in the business. I've been with them for almost 8 years, but I was never raised in the automotive world. Came from a family that, didn't even help me have car insurance or have an identity when I joined the Marine Corps. So I had to learn about going to dealerships and what that experience looked like on my own and independently. And I had to learn through trial and error as a customer. But I worked for a fintech company out of Salt Lake City and did consulting for states here on the East Coast. And my wife had a baby and I was looking to be more local. And we have a local dealer that's, a huge employer in our area. And I didn't think that I'd ever want to work in the automotive industry, but my brand specifically is known for paying it forward. So they have a Pohanka Pays It Forward campaign, and almost every community initiative, nonprofit, hospital, university, we're involved in some philanthropic way. And that is what spoke to me. That's why, I came in and interviewed with my boss, who had said, hey, we've always had some ideas to do outside sales and loyalty and some things for VIP. This is years ago, but we've never had a dedicated person, and everything we do is inside sales. And you're an outside sales expert with these other companies. We'd love to have you come in and look at that. So it's slightly different, my role, than like a fleet or commercial thing, but it kind of goes hand in hand with what I did. And within a short amount of time of coming on to them, I said, look, the whole reason I said yes to this company and decided to jump into the automotive world is because of how much impact you have on that, you care, and that this business is, no pun intended or pun intended, driving our community. And so that became my tagline. And I said, look, instead of just outside sales or, business to business, like, let's build the loyalty and the brand and piggyback off of what you've already started. And my boss, Sandy, started this initiative in 2009, post-housing crisis. And it was about the time where, everybody was reeling back their philanthropic giving and support. All these businesses, organizations, the nonprofits that support the community were suffering. And she said, listen, we're going to reel back on the spooky Halloween commercials. We're going to reel back on the balloons. We're going to inject that money directly in the community. And that was at a critical time where that was uncommon. And then, years later, we were known as the people who are about as involved as a business can be in their community. And so I just took that and said 8 years ago or 7 years ago in 2018, I said, well, we're aligning with all these nonprofits, but why don't we align with businesses like us who also align with these nonprofits and civic organizations, anybody who's paying it forward, not just the United Way or the Junior Achievement or all, the amazing institutions. Why are we not aligning with them too, to give them some sort of benefit? And so I come in so I developed that. And I've been very fortunate in the last 7 years to bring on over 300 partners in my small community. And I have most major employers and hospitals and universities. And I do small business, big business, and I represent us in a lot of ways. But it's a phenomenal job. And really, at the end of the day, it's a way to help educate the community about what we do, and that we're not just this corporate soulless thing. We want to make money. It's a business, but that there's more there. And so I manage a lot of our brand loyalty from the top of mind marketing. I have a real marketing director who has to manage all my general managers and does the real hard work of, well, this one wants print and this one wants radio and this one wants paper and this one wants an event. And I am more of the one that's out there shaking the babies and kissing the hands at all the marathons and the hospital galas and those sort of things. And the connectedness is great. So what I did with my program was to say, hey, not only can we assist you with your fleet needs, let's just use your university or hospital, for example. Hey, you need 25 new RAV4 whatever white for the hospital. We can help you. But for your 6,000 employees, I would extend the same fleet benefit to all of them for their individual purchases. And
Right.
so I extend to them my community partners benefit, which is my program. It's a community partners program. I extend that same benefit for the lady coding in the basement of the hospital. She gets the same hookup that the CEO of the hospital gets. If she's a part of an organization that's paying it forward, we extend that to all them for their personal vehicles. And so it generates a lot of referrals for the dealership, and it's done, in a really nice way where not only do I get to direct a lot of our philanthropic endeavors and where there's ROI for the dealership and where we can give back and start to shape that as well, in addition to the amount that my boss does, which is significant. I'm able to touch and reach all of these institutions. And then over time, I have a pretty strong network. And so when there's a need or there's an event or somebody wants to do something, I'm usually the person who knows how to call and make that thing happen at the mall or at the hospital or with the city or the county or the state. So yeah, and so that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, that's some of my story.
Well, it's interesting because I think when I got in the car business 25 years ago, even though I have a family history, there's a running joke in the industry that you sort of go into the CIA or something. You're like, who knows what you're doing? Like, you don't want to tell anybody I'm in the car business. And I even
Yeah,
remember my brother going, really? Like, that's what your thought was? Which I thought was hilarious. But I've done shows over the years where we talked about, how car dealers give back to the community and how that usually is like a Happy Gilmore scene with a big check and look at this,
yeah, right. It's
which is
more
not
sometimes it's just
really,
the PR. Yeah,
yeah, it's not really kind of the thing that you want to see. And there's even ones that do, they do like turkey giveaways and this kind of stuff. There's even a dealer where I used to live that they have like a contest giveaway for like a private sale or whatever it is.
sure.
But when you're actually embedded in a community and you're actually working with other businesses to help those businesses, but more importantly to help maybe people work with or around that business, connect to your business, that's a game changer in my opinion. But more importantly, I think a lot of people who buy cars at car dealers or consider buying cars at car dealers, they kind of look at it as that like that big inflatable gorilla that you see at some private sales. They don't really look at it as like, yeah, these guys employ thousands of people in a community in some cases or more. And really, when people look at the auto industry, I think they see the car side, like, oh, you
Yeah,
sell cars, you service cars. But what they don't see is all those connections in that community. People who
sure.
sell tires, people who sell parts, people who do repairs on vehicles, people that employ people with various skills. So I think that the car business needs to do a better job of sharing what the good that they do in the
Yeah.
car in the community around the locations. And I think it sounds like that's kind of what you do. But what feedback do you get from people who are like, wow, like you work for a car dealership? Like what kind of feedback do you get when they realize like this is a car dealership initiative?
Yeah. Well, it's weird. Like I think I got it early on. It was a little uncomfortable the same way, admitting that I skateboarded in my 40s or, or like, like I serve in a lot of board of directors and like, it's like, well, I play, a competitive card game. It's like, you don't want to admit there's certain things you're like, oh, like, people are shy about certain hobby things, certain things,
Yeah.
but I don't get it. I honestly, it's funny because I guess I remember those feelings, but I haven't had it in so long because I'm well known. I'm the networker, I'm the connector. A lot of people know me. I'm very gregarious, and I make sure, like you said, I mean, it's a really great point that I let people know. Not only do I educate them on the car business and how that looks different now. You haven't bought a car in 10 years. Well, let me give you some information that's going to help you set expectations and curve that. But also when I'm presenting to a school, a public school, and I'm or talking to a city and they've got 400 employees and I'm at their kickoff rally to talk about why we're extending this benefit to them and the impact they have and that we recognize it. And this is the perk that they get with us now. They get invoice on cars or whatever that may be.
Okay.
The most, impactful thing that I get regularly where I feel like I'm of value is people walking up to me after a meeting going, I never realized what your dealership does in this community. I never really understood. And this was my perception. And then they basically are like, I'm going to come see you. And when I generate that loyalty just from sharing the stories of the impacts that we have, and a great example is just that my boss was a breast cancer survivor, and she started this nonprofit called Road to Recovery. But
Yeah.
for over a decade, she's been doing this. And any single person who calls the American Cancer Society in my community within a multi county area, if they're going through treatment and their caregiver, they need help, their caregiver, then they call the Cancer Society, lets us know. We send a car to pick them up and their provider, take them to John Hopkins across the bridge, 2 hours for free. And we've been doing it for a decade or more. And most people in our community have no idea. We don't even talk about it because we're doing it for the right reason. So my boss has way more humility than most, I think, in the business. Those are things that when I share those stories and those testimonies out, the impact that it has on people is profound. And so for me, I don't wear any shame when it comes to what I do with us. And so I'm very fortunate that I don't sell cars, that I sell our dealerships kind of more. And I think if I had to say, I don't know how many, I don't know all the dealers. I care about ours, but internationally, you have a great audience, and of all the automotive folks, I don't know how many people dedicate the resources to have somebody like me work for them to have that impact. Because they're like, well, my GM's part of the chamber, or my guy or gal is here, and a lot of their folks are great champions for their company, right? If you're doing a good job, then your leadership are going to be champions for you. But if it's not strategic, sometimes it's worth that investment. And because some of the times the metrics with the impact that I have are hard to track, people don't always have the trust or faith to have somebody like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about that dealer? Thanks for that. So what about that
Yeah.
dealer who says, "Hey, I deliver the Happy Gilmore checks, but I want to do
Yeah.
more than that. Like
Yeah.
I want people that work for my company to be proud to work for my company. I want to get more involved with the community. I want to counteract that negative impression of the car business and say, hey, we're not just selling and servicing cars. We actually support the community around us. Like, how would they get started? Like, what did that process look like as you went
Well,
through this initiative?
Well, for me, it might be a little simpler to narrow it down because, where I live, even though it's a very populated area, it's easier to narrow down who the top employers are it's easier to know, when I grew up here before I left for the military, you were like, well, you either work for the hospital, you work in construction, you work for the dealership, or you're poor. Like that. And it's not the case here anymore. There's a ton of incredible employers, but that was the perception too as a young kid growing up here. And so that's why I left. I would always tell them, so it's what you do. Everything I do is very grassroots too. So you're not going to see commercials with me. Everything I do, I extend that benefit to a nonprofit. And then I say, hey, who are your donors? Right? Hey, first of all, I go, what is a need that I care about? What's something that speaks to my dealership? Is it autism? Is it food insecurity? Is it homelessness? Whatever it is, right? And then I find those nonprofits that, are always, because people are asking dealerships for money every single day. And a lot
Yeah.
of times you have to say no. You're inundated with people for asking, hey, my travel football team. It's like, well, that's optional, right? So when it comes to there needs to be an ROI. But I started my program by going out to the big ones that had the highest impact on the actual citizens, because that's also going to have the highest impact on my consumers my customers that are coming in the dealership. One
Yeah.
out of every three families is impacted by our local United Way here. So
Yeah.
that means one out of every three customers walking in, if you care about the United Way, which my people do a campaign where they give, and my boss matches anything that we give. She doubles whatever we give. So we raise, like 70 grand some years for the United Way, because just from paychecks. But you go to that organization, you find their donors, and then you go, okay, I'm going to go present Purdue Chicken with the same partnership program I give the United Way. And
Yeah.
I'm going to market that they are an organization that pays it forward and gives back the same way that Pohanka does. And I'm going to recognize that employer on our website next to the community foundation or the junior achievement. So, and then I go to that employer, and then as I'm meeting with them and getting to know their leadership, I go, well, what are some other organizations you do? And then I just go to the next nonprofit and say, hey, Purdue said that you are great at supporting, autism. And then I go to that institution and say, hey, Purdue says that they really care about your mission. Who are some of your donors? And so I've been doing that for 7 years. And as much as I would love to extend and change how we do business in the way that I do, which I haven't really talked about yet, it's an exclusive program, because if there's not exclusivity, then like, what's the value in it? And in my perfect world, every dealership would extend the benefits that I give to the business communities, the nonprofit communities, and the key players to every consumer. But yeah, so but I try to limit and I try to I try to diversify my nonprofits, my for-profits, my civics, my government, those sort of things. So yeah.
So is that part of like a quarterly or an annual plan? Is there a certain percentage? Is there like, what from a deal perspective, I invest money in someone like yourself or a team of,
Yeah.
ambassadors like yourself in a bigger
Yeah.
city. What like, how does that planned out? Is that like a quarterly thing? Is that an
Well,
annual thing? Like, how do you do
Well, most dealerships operate monthly. So, I mean, some dealerships do things differently. For me, I do the same thing most sales organizations do, which is like, when the month hits zero, you start over again. When it ends,
that?
they forgot how successful you were. So I'm used to operating in that in past companies and past sales roles for different industries. So for me, it's monthly and I track it. But the I would say the most challenging part is the human aspect. So when I first started with this role, I wanted to simplify. I'm a big process improvement guy, and I wanted to simplify the human error aspect, which there's a lot in a dealership. You have 1,000 humans working for you. There's a lot of human error, and people are always trying to eliminate that. And you use technology and AI and all these things but those, you still need them to put into the CRM, whether it's a CDK or whatever it may be,
Yeah,
that this person works for the hospital or this
yeah,
person works with the public schools. And so, or if somebody came in as a partner and their husband or their wife, or their aunt financed the car, even though they were the community partner, a lot of times your salesperson might just just put it in the thing and not ever connect the dots. So tracking the partners is challenging. That's probably the most challenging piece of my role is tracking the metrics. So I'm still 7 years later working on that being a
right.
seamless piece because you still need the human input piece of it. So I used to do waterfall training and POS for like Ashley Furniture Home Store. So I'd
Yeah,
come in and do consulting on primary and secondary and tertiary and even quaternary lending, and I'd help them with their system. So when I set this up with my employer, I had I would refer in my marketing materials to the hospital for their 6,000 employees. Hey, you get these benefits. Here's why you get them, because you're part of this institution paying it forward.
yeah,
And go on to the website, because it's hard. 40,000 people within 100 miles of me have my cell phone, but I can't service all of them at the same time.
no,
And I also I don't need to build a giant team either. So I did just a normal flow from they register online, that would drop them into the dealership that they were the most interested in. I'd have a business sales rep at one of the things on my team, knowing like that this is coming in from a community college or wherever it was.
yeah.
And so that would just automatically input it into CDK. And so that's how we started the tracking piece. But there's still a lot of human error that's challenging to navigate. Yeah.
And what kind of upside? Like, obviously, I guess you're sort of comparing it to like a fleet department, but what kind
Yeah.
of upside has it meant for the dealer group? Like, what does that mean?
Well, I have a degree in conflict analysis and dispute resolution, which, we talked about degrees, we were
Yeah,
getting to know each other and how,
yeah,
like, sometimes they're not relevant, but we're grateful for them. Ironically, I'm putting out more fires now than ever before. And so my mediation degree is helping a lot. But so there's a lot of value in the relationship piece. And we have an incredible growing fleet thing. It didn't exist when I started with this company. When I started with them, they didn't have any domestic brands. They didn't really have fleet outside of like Mercedes Sprinters. Now we
right.
have Ford and Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler, and we have a lot of, so we've built our fleet up. And I'm actually, meeting with them this week as we have new leadership I'm an asset to help them grow that, because it's
Yeah,
hand in hand with the relationships that I have. But it's slightly different, because that connectedness of the dealerships and the pieces, at the end of the day, cars need to be sold, right? For us
right.
to all be successful and for
Yeah,
everybody to win. But there's more value there of knowing what's going on at the hospital and why that's different from the hospital 30 minutes up the road, and what
right.
all the different institutions, how the public schools operate, how the different superintendents operate. There's a lot of value in that piece alone, and that's how I've kind of built my career, as being an asset to our dealership. But I think that takes a certain type of individual, so I don't always know. You're talking about how to duplicate that. I've always considered that. I've only been focused on our brand before, but how to duplicate it, it's definitely duplicatable. But like I said, I like it in a grassroots way, and it has to be somebody that's genuine, and it can't be a disingenuous. The check presentations are great; those are important. It's good to have your photo op. It's good to get on
Yeah,
Facebook, and it's
yeah,
good. You want to be seen. Salespeople, we're teaching every one of them to build their own business and to build their own brand, using us as
yeah.
that thing. That's fantastic, but it's still really important to be genuine and to make those connections to the other leaders that have those institutions. I don't know, if that's answering your question all the way.
Sure.
Ian. Yeah.
And then in terms of changing perception, have you noticed over that 8-year period, when you talk to people now and you say, "Hey, I work for this deal group, Pohanka of Salisbury, and this is the initiative," has that changed sort of how they react to that now moving
Yeah.
forward, years of doing it? Has that changed sort of the discussion?
Yeah,
Because I find
it's
when I got out of the car business, I talk to people and have a car background, they're much more apt to ask me questions than
yeah.
when I was in the business. They're like, "Oh yeah, I have this question." It's just
Yeah.
funny.
Well, from an organization standpoint, when I started, I came in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, excited for this initiative, excited to have this opportunity where they're like, "Look, we've done this thing. We've never done it really well. It's been an idea, but nobody really invested the time that it needed or nurtured this thing into something more fruition." And at first it was a little bit smoky room and VIP,
Yeah,
and it didn't feel good to me. And
right,
so I kind of rebranded that into what I created with the partnership piece. But it there's institutions that I walked into immediately that I didn't know we had a history with, right? I didn't know that there was bad blood here or that there's politics and bureaucracy and all these things. And so
yeah,
I would walk into an institution so excited to offer them my new program, and they'd be like, "Well, this happened 10 years ago with a guy who, like, it wasn't even our company. It was like the business that we bought 10 years ago that we weren't even a part of." So you encounter those things. So there's that changing piece. But just last week, and this happens on a weekly, daily basis for me, have a customer, they're with an insurance group, she was buying a car, her daughter was in didn't have good credit. She's like, "You know what, I'm going to sell her my car. I'm in a good spot. And I'm going to buy a new car finally after 13 years." And then she shared with me that she had a bad experience with us 20 years ago and that she was never coming back, right? But because of the relationship I had with her organization, and come in and presented to their team of 50 insurance agents and let them know what we do, she gave us that chance. And then here I am able to mend those things. And our dealerships never make any mistakes, right? They never make any mistakes. Everybody's great. Any employee we've ever lost, they weren't worth it. Any car deal lost, well, they weren't going to buy.
yeah,
That's how they live their lives day to day to survive with the stress of losing deals. But for me, they don't. A lot of times, my people don't see that remedial piece, and it's critical to continuing to build and selling 1,000+ units a month. You like, there's a lot of people that we've made mistakes with in the past. They got the wrong salesperson. They came in on the wrong day. They got the angry sales manager. He had a bad day and they were never coming back, or they misinterpreted something, but from their perception, it was a negative experience. The finance person was shady. Well, it's because they didn't have your rate yet or whatever it was. So I see every day a testimony where I get that person back into the dealership from a retention standpoint, and then they're happy. And for me, I'm very fortunate that my job is like the best job ever. I give money to nonprofits to help with strategic partnerships. I'm able to support institutions and hook them up in a way that only the leader would get hooked up by calling my boss or I, right? Now the person that's, like I said, in the basement of the hospital, that's, has a tough job. She's part of an institution that's paying it forward in my community. She's able to get the same access that the CEO has when he needs a car for him. So she gets that same thing where I have a top-down process for them, right? So the average person walks in, they're they get some random person, they're all chain smoking outside, and their guard's already up, they've already come in, they probably had to pep talk themselves and go get Starbucks, and they come in knowing that it's going to be a war. And I do the opposite. When a partner registers for the program, it's a nurse or the hospital or a teacher in my county, the GM sees that it's one of my people, and I basically shielded them from the typical up. And then I hand select. I like to joke that I'm the eHarmony of my car dealerships, because I'll do an intake with the customer, find out what their needs are. I'll put them at the dealership that matters the most to them, that for whatever their needs are. I'll start them with a salesperson who can go across complex to all of our brands, because technically our people can sell anything, but they like to sell the store that they work at, and there's a lot of pressure for them to sell the brand or for
right,
the store they're working to. So
right.
those things are all helpful. Anyway, so that's that retention piece of changing people's perceptions, repairing old relationships that between institutions or just individual customers, presenting to an all-staff meeting, like I said, and having people walk up to me after and go, "I just thought you guys were some company out of Virginia. I didn't realize the impact you're having here locally. I'm going to come in with my family this week because I was going to go here." I mean, that's when I know that what I'm doing is working, and the frequency of it's fantastic. But it is hard. I can't always track that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if someone's looking for a car where you guys do business, how's the best way, or what's the best way for them to find you and reach out to you, maybe with questions if they're maybe not in your market and they want some thoughts on how this may work for their part of the universe?
Yeah. So, I think the same way you found me, which was, my LinkedIn. I don't really participate in a lot of social platforms personally, but LinkedIn is my favorite space because what I do, it's for me, I find LinkedIn to be more business to business. Whereas Facebook can, there's plenty of consumers on LinkedIn. We're consumers on LinkedIn, but Facebook is more of a consumer. So for me, with partnerships, I spend a lot more time, and professionals and representing chambers in multiple counties, I spend more time with LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn for Aaron Guy with Pohanka is
Will be
probably the
detailed
best.
below.
Yeah, details below, and then and then they can give me give me a ring if they want to. I'm scared. I mean, I'd give them my phone number. I don't know if that's smart or not. I know you have a lot of followers. I don't know who would call me, but have you had people give things out in the past, Ian? What's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put the contact below. I mean, I believe it or not, I've had my phone number on LinkedIn since 2005,
Yeah,
and very few people call. I don't know why that
yeah,
is, but I
yeah,
had one person. I think he was a person working in the car business who called me a couple of years ago, and he was shocked it was the real phone number. I'm like, dude,
yeah.
like, I'm
200 and
online. Like,
yeah,
I'm happy to talk to you. He was like shocked, but I remember back when.
250,000 alumni of Salisbury University have my phone number, and I get 10 calls a year from alumni only. So it is kind of crazy the volume that you can reach, and people know who you are. And but then they'll still walk in, or they'll register online. But yeah, no, that's good. So I'd be happy to share that because I've done some consulting on process improvement and facilitation, some other things I do on the side. But yeah, but I'd like to, I love what I do. I'd love to duplicate it for more people. I care very much about our brand, and I'm very bought into what my leader, Sandy, does, and is incredible. But I would love to see the car world do this more because everybody wins. You get more legacy car sales, and you get to improve your community, and everybody makes money. And for me, we didn't, I don't know if this is okay, but we didn't touch on this, but there's so many organizations out there doing tires for life and oil changes for life, and our dealerships had tried those. And I just had a customer the other day talk to me about how they're doing that. They have that and they love that. And ironically, what I've seen is those customers will not go buy a new car because they don't want to lose the grandfather of those programs. So it actually, yeah, you get the sale today, and customers love it, but it winds up being like a negative for the dealerships. And those programs, when I first came in 8 years ago, I was met with kind of a lot of hostility from leadership who were like, we've done all these programs. What are you going to do different? And I was like, okay, well, thanks. I'm glad I had the Marine Corps to be able to survive here. But what I'm going to do is different. And like, okay, right now, thankfully, 8 years later, here I am. And what's different is that I wanted to say, what's our bottom line was still being sustainable? What can we really do authentically that's not going to put us in the red? Because those programs wind up discontinuing, or they have different life cycles. I'd rather see you invest in your community, get some ROI on that, sell more cars, be connected to these institutions, not just trying to convert every up that comes in. And you'll have that greater loyalty, that greater retention. So for me, I would love to see more dealerships do that. And I'd love to find more that are doing that, because I don't know many, because I don't spend time looking at other dealers. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and I always, when I worked for Nissan, I always used to talk to these dealers who had these, like, oil change for life programs. And to your point, what the funniest one I remember was a dealer that had sold the car to one customer. They'd then turned that over and sold it to someone else. The person who was the second owner was still getting oil change for life because they didn't update anything. And I'm sitting there going, like, and then they would go get into fights with, oh, you didn't do your other service here, and we're not going to do it. And it was like dumb pissing matches for no reason.
Yeah.
And the thing that was crazy to me, I mean, if you're going to do something, you're better to have a barbecue a couple times a year. That's a better use of resources
For
than
sure.
than an oil change. I mean, oil changes aren't really an expensive thing anyway, but
Yeah.
it's a common thing. It's like if you the one that I've I trained on years ago is on in the service side of the business, which is sell everybody tires. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you make money on the tires. Just
You're
sell
right.
everyone tires, because nobody wants to come back and go, "Oh, I bought them somewhere else." Nobody wants to do that, because
No.
they look bad when they do that, because they know you have a record of what tires are on it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's thinking about it intelligently, but B, it's about starting somewhere. That at the end of the day, it's always about the customer and customer experience, but that doesn't mean that you can't change that in a positive way if you reach out to the customer. I was on an episode, might have been a couple weeks ago. We were saying, wouldn't it be a game changer if the dealer themselves called the angry customers who said they're never coming back?
Right.
Wouldn't it be great if the dealer just said, "Listen, obviously something went wrong here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm looking at the thing. They're saying one thing. You're saying something else. What do we got to do to make that right?
Right.
Like, clearly there's something got screwed up. I don't want to blame anybody. I don't really care. I just want to make it right.
Sure.
How do I do that?" So there
Yeah.
was an example that I use all the time as a dealer. What they did is they had a detail that they gave away randomly to one random customer every month. So
Yeah.
they basically just say, listen, you won this lotto for a free detail. When did you want to come in? And it was like a random, I don't know what that costs, probably not a lot of money, but it's the thought, right? And it's about these kind of initiatives. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we get caught in that 30-day spin cycle, and we're not thinking seasonally. We're not thinking annually. We're not thinking, some of these dealers have been around over 100 years. We're not thinking about, okay, we wouldn't be here 100 years if we didn't take care of our customer
Sure.
or
It,
our
well,
community.
yeah, and I think one of the things that's a critical piece is I don't make my money on the car sales. I should. I'd make a lot more. I think. But there's those situations. Everybody thinks that they're going to win these customers over, but there's a trust piece with me. So not only do I have the connection, and now said nurse is calling from the hospital and she's registering for the program. Not only am I taking 20 minutes out of my day to kind of field, which do a brief intake to be able to handle a four square off to one of my teammates, but I'm hand selecting us person. We have 400 salespeople. I'm picking the ones that care about legacy, that are going to do right by my program, because I don't want you to lie to me, take the customer, and then early on when I was new to this program,
Yeah.
trying to get people to adopt it, I didn't know who I could trust. And so you'd hand somebody off and say, "Oh, I got it," and they would be lying to my face, and they would do the opposite of what I expected for us to honor. And I don't want to look like a liar in my community. And
Yeah.
so, but what's unfortunate, Ian, is like there's a culture of, and sometimes it's true, where the salespeople are like, "Hey, do what you can today, do everything you can to get every money, because that person, as much as you think you're going to treat them nice, they're not coming back. Next time they buy a car 3 years from now, they're going to come in, they're not going to remember your name. So everything you do is not building anything. They don't care." And it is true sometimes. There's but I'll tell you what, though, people do call me, and then I go, "Oh, who'd you work with last time, Marquise? Listen, 100% you should work with him again. Even though he's at a different dealership now, he can still sell you that Ford." So yeah, definitely. So and then also, because I don't make my money on the car sales, there's that trust piece, right? The people already coming in on their guard. They've had bad experiences because they were raised, or maybe their parents told them that this is why they need to be. Even though
Yeah.
the dealerships have changed a lot, people were burnt. People that are older have had multiple negative car experiences
Yeah.
wherever they live, wherever they come from. They come in with their own stories. We have our own stories, and they're not always on the same page. But when I hand a customer off and say, "Come into the sales manager," not the opposite, where they come in and they go, the random person with the up, and then they spend 4 hours that guy, and then the guy keeps going, "Oh, my manager's not going to go for this." And then that guy comes over at the end and is like, "Hey, I've seen you've been working with Jerry. Is there anything else we can do?" Even if they got a good deal in the car, they don't walk away feeling like they made out. But when I hand them off to the sales manager first, then they get their salesperson, and it's one that I've hand selected for them, that I know that cares about legacy and building a brand, not just what they can do just now. And when that customer runs into issues, I say, "Look, I'm a breaking case of emergencies. I'm going to hand you off. You're probably not going to need me ever again, but I'm here to resolve anything. I don't care if my people do, but I don't care if you buy from Ford or Toyota. I just care that you're happy and that
Yeah.
you want to come back and that you have the best experience and you get a good price that you feel good about." So what's great for me is when there's an issue, I'm this third party. Granted, I'm a middleman. I'm a third party that the customer does trust. And I can say to them, I don't make money on these deals for you. So what I'm going to tell you, it is. And so I help grease the wheel for salespeople and for sales managers who are having a tough time with a customer, because for a multitude of reasons. I bring in that level of trust to help mediate and calm down a deal that might be lost because of uncertainty, because
Yeah.
there's not peace of mind. And I'm able to give that peace of mind specifically because this role was so unique, and the fact that the dealership trusts and supports me in a way that, that's not how I make my money. And so that alone is really valuable, so that you can salvage deals that might otherwise walk. Because when I call and go, "Look, I've looked into this on CDK, and this is what we bought the car for. This is where we're at," they're not lying to you. This is exactly where we're at, and they're willing to take 500 more off because you're a nurse at the hospital, and we'll lose money on this. And here's why: it's an old age unit. It's this. This is why. Because that always sounds like you're lying to them too. I'm just very transparent with them, and that transparency, that's huge for me, but it's huge for our dealerships.
Oh yeah,
So
I mean, when I was an internet manager and a lease manager and a sales manager, I mean, as I said earlier before this, is it's really about demystifying the perception that this is some sort of tricky game. I mean, at the end of
yeah,
the day, there's only a
the
few things you
smoke.
can control, And at the end of the day, transparency is the right answer. I mean, I know there are some dealers who still feel they can play games and get away with it, but at the end of the day, it's the customer you got to explain it to. And when I sold cars initially at a point store and then I sold cars at an auto mall location, the big difference in how I approached it was I would sell cars generally based on a payment structure that worked for the customer, not on a price structure. I'd listen
Yeah,
to the customer, but I'd go, listen, like, this is the vehicle, this is what I can sell for, here's the way to pay for it.
sure.
And that was much better than the fisticuffs argument about, well, 50 bucks here and 100 bucks there or whatever it might be. And I think that's the customers, the reason they fight those battles is their perception is that otherwise they're going to get ripped off. And I think that's something that the car business needs to fix,
Sure.
and fix it soon, because as you look at other companies getting into the car business, they wouldn't have gotten in the car business if people loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, people like dentists more than car dealers, which is not a good
Yeah.
comparison. Like, just not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a fan of dentists, but like, they're consistent with appointments and pricing, and you
Yeah.
may argue that maybe the pain ain't worth that, but it is what it is. But I appreciate you taking the time today. More details will be below. If you are in the Maryland area, Maryland, Virginia area, and you're looking for a VIP experience from
Yeah.
a great dealer group, obviously, reach out to you. You can help them out. And then if you're a dealer group that wants to give back to the community and maybe is looking for a roadmap of how to do that, obviously feel free to pick Aaron's brain on what they did, and maybe that is adaptable to where you are. But I've always been of the belief that dealers need to spend more time sharing how they support a local community, because they do. But more importantly, stop being in the CIA. You're not like jumping out of reality and going behind a dark curtain. That's not what you're doing. You're selling products and services. And more importantly, and this is something I felt when I sold cars, you're helping people find a solution to their transportation problem. That problem isn't going away. Like, they're going to need help, and that's why dealers exist. I mean, manufacturers, I know, seem to think that they know better than the dealer, but I think that that's a mistake as well. I think the dealer is embedded in community, and the community should respect what they do, in my opinion. But thanks for
Absolutely.
taking the time. Appreciate it. Any final thoughts?
Oh no, I just really appreciate that, and yeah, I'd love to see us, change the automotive industry for the better. So,
Well,
but
that's the
thanks for the
purpose of the
interview.
show that I do.
Yeah.
Changing the industry for the better, one show at a time. That's been my mantra for a long time. And I agree 100%. I think the industry can make itself better, but more importantly, you can change that perception. You don't want to be lumped in with dentists, lawyers, and politicians, not to beat them up, but we should be higher up that list, in
Yeah.
my opinion, because actually we're providing a service people need. But thanks for taking the time today, and have yourself a great day.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks for
See
watching.
you.